Lee has this incredible book, which I have the early edition, which has all the notes in it, called Conversations with the Z's. And it's a wonderful interview with Diana Edwards and Lee Harris. And it's just such an incredible, incredible piece of work. I think this is going to be one of those classics that's going to last eons because there's so much amazing gems in it. Welcome to my show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Happy. Thank you for such a warm welcome. It's lovely to be with you.
I had the pleasure of reading your book this last week. I saved it towards the end, so it would be close to the interview, so it'll all be fresh in my mind. And it was just one for me. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little, when you've read everything, you've downloaded so much, you've heard everything, and you're just thinking, oh, another book about the same topics. And I thought, when I read new stuff that's even being channeled, it always feels like it's just a repeat of the same old. But when I was reading your book, it was just the way that you were saying things. It was so just slightly, the nuances were so different. It was hitting the spot. And for me, to impress me is actually really difficult. And it was just beautiful the way that the topics were so relevant to now, because as we all know, the world is going through a shift and we don't even have to talk about it and say it's coming because we all know it, we feel it.
Yeah.
And
well, thank you, because that's the best praise.
What keeps you going to want to help humanity? I know, why do you do this?
I think for me, the helping humanity piece, it kind of happened to me. It's not like I was this incredibly enlightened 20-year-old who knew exactly what to do, but I was compelled from an early age to, I will say, broadcast. I feel very grateful that I get to do what I do. I will say that the reason I haven't stopped channeling, and there have been 4 times in my 18 years of doing this work as a job that I have seriously considered stopping channeling. I haven't stopped doing that because of the effect it has on people. And that's been undeniable to me, even though sometimes it would have been more convenient to put the channeling away and have my own private relationship. It is the power of the Z's and what it does for the groups of people it works for. That's what has kept me doing even things like this book, which was, sorry, I have a copy of the book here. So I'm just, even things like the book are, it comes from understanding that what I am equipped to do seems to be intersecting with what a certain number of people need.
So This book, for anybody who is just wanting to just enjoy some incredible information and just, have a new Bible, not to say Bible, because I know you're going to jump at me for that one.
But no, I won't.
It is really a wonderful reference guide, is what I would call it. It's part of the encyclopedia that I'll put up there from A to Z, A to Z's, which is wonderful because there's so much wonderful topics being covered. One of them was really interesting for me because we as humans tend to repeat a lot of patterns that sometimes feel like they're not necessarily fun. And I have my own takes on everything, which I will keep to myself. But what you mentioned, or the Z mentioned, that we live certain patterns so that we can be rid of them. And some just think they're trapped in a loop. They can't get out of it. But what exactly do you mean that we choose to live? I'm assuming that we choose to live these patterns so that we can process them.
Good question. I think if I remember rightly in that part of the book and the conversations, what they were trying to point out is that we often, and I'm sure you've heard this, Happy, especially in our community, the self-growth community, spiritual community, there's often this tendency of, oh God, I'm thinking about that again. And the Z's always say, no. They say, celebrate that. If you notice that you are repeating a habit or a pattern, the celebration is the fact you noticed. Because if there is a part of you that can just observe, here you are in this loop again, then you've developed some space away from the loop. What the Z's are saying is we will go through these loops and we will go through these cycles, and some things we will let go of really easily, but we tend to forget those. We only know the things that we recognize we haven't let go. And the reason that they often cycle through us is they have some kind of key learning for us or key theme in our life. So I think what the Z's are saying is when you're in a loop around something, get curious as to why. It's not just because you are not very good at healing that area of your life. It's that there are either more messages, more letting go, or more reason that you have some alignment with this issue. And I think often we get this idea in the spiritual community that we are supposed to live in a perpetual state of Zen. And the Z's have said, no, that's not what you're here for as a human, and that's not what this planet is. So there will be increased states of Zen overall and increased practices that we can develop that give us Zen, that help us stay balanced. But part of this dance for us being on the planet is to be a part of the healing of the planet, including our own. And I think the areas that we get challenged by, we often become ambassadors for others through, and vice versa. There are other people who've gone through something that we need to hear or learn. So that's kind of my interpretation of what they said there.
And by the way, I just want to tell you something. I have been trying to verbally channel for 20 years. And when someone like you says, well, I think I want to stop channeling, and or I've thought about it, I just want to like slap you across the face. You're like, what the? Are you kidding me? Like, I've been trying
Well, then I'm glad we're on Zoom. And it's interesting hearing you say that about me wanting to stop channeling, because I watched a few years ago, I watched a documentary about Joan Rivers's life. She really wanted to be an actress. I had no idea. And she never cared about, or she said she didn't care about her success as a comedian because that wasn't what she wanted to do. Now, of course, I'm sure she was glad she did it and it gave her a great life and everything. And it was an interesting moment for me because I was watching that documentary and it took me back and I thought, wow, I really wanted to be a singer-songwriter in my early 20s. And I never wanted to be a channeler. The channeling thing blew up around me without me. All I did was kept showing up and doing it and doing readings. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. So I have to say I'm kind of grateful that I didn't ever want to be a channeler, and that this work I do today is not anything I ever envisioned for myself, because I think it's interesting. It's just different to, yes, I decided I was going to be the world's top investment banker and that's what I made happen. I haven't had that trajectory, so it's been interesting to have no attachment to the thing that you are happy to serve, and happy is growing, but it wasn't something I went looking for. I was looking for something else. So that's funny.
People have this craving to know what their purpose is. Sometimes just surrender is what it is. But what is your take on how do people figure out their life purpose?
To me, when you're looking for your life purpose, there is something that you are just not happy with or not fulfilled by. So I think for some people, life purpose, they tend to equate with career or family, being a parent. For other people, it's maybe a bit broader than that or a bit more amorphous. So I think the first thing is being able to identify when you feel purposeful. Like, do you feel purposeful when you're helping a friend on the phone? Do you feel purposeful when you're feeding your family? Do you feel purposeful when you're gardening? Do you feel purposeful when you do aspects of your job? So first of all, being able to truly know, what do you mean by feeling on purpose? When does that show up in your life? And what are the elements of your life that you already feel that in? So that you have some sense of what you're looking for. You're like, oh yeah, I like doing that. Because then you start to get more clues about where your purpose can lie. So for me, I said at the very beginning of this, broadcasting, like essentially putting messages in bottles out into the world, whether it's a video, whether it's an audio, whether it's a book. I love that. Like, it really fulfills me that that's my work. And it doesn't mean I'm constantly in a state of happiness, euphoria, and no challenge with that, because of course I am. But it's my bigger purpose to do it. So I'm willing to figure out the challenges or the things I need to learn, because it's a bigger arc. And I think at the moment, we've just gone through this massive period for everybody in the last 2.5 years where the world got stopped in ways that nobody anticipated. And I think it was a come to Jesus moment for a lot of people around their life, around their relationships, around the way they were living. And I think for all of us that was true, but I think for some people more than others. For some people, it was like, oh, hang on a second, I've just been on autopilot and I didn't even realize. And now all the things I took for granted have been taken away. Where am I finding my joy and my connection now? So I think we're in a bit of a moment in time for people around purpose. And I think you can drive yourself mad trying to, via your mind, figure out what your greatest purpose is. You've got to try things. I think a lot of the times I've met people who are trying to figure it out. And when I say to them, well, what have you actually tried? And what notes have you made about trying those things? And they're, oh, well, I haven't yet because I don't know. Well, you won't know, like, unless you go and try salsa dancing. And they go, well, I don't know if I'm very good. Well, you don't know. So go and try salsa dancing because you had this intuitive thought about it that you've now talked yourself out of. And so for me, a lot of the time, any time that we step more into our purpose, we're really just stepping more into who we're here to be. And if who we're here to be is having a fulfilling life, again, a life that may have challenges, a life that may have parts you don't enjoy as much as others, but if overall you can go to bed at night and go, wow, I'm actually generally having a really fulfilling life right now, or more so than I've ever had, or I'm more content than I've ever been, then what other aspects of your life can you find that light you up? And often for us, purpose comes back to service. Where are you joyously serving and connecting with others? And that goes the same if you're anti-humans. Are you working in nature the way that you have this affinity with nature that you talk about? Are you working with animals because you way prefer animals to nature and humans? So are you giving yourself to your purpose, or did you along the way get stuck in the thing that society told you you were supposed to do, and it sucked all the life out of you? And now you're sat there thinking, I don't know what my purpose is and I don't know where to start. So my advice would be make a list of what lights you up. Notice, tell me about the happiest parts of your life right now. Even if you can't even call them happy, you can just call them not painful like some of the other stuff. Tell me about the happiest parts of your life. Go back to your childhood. What lit you up as a kid? There might be some clues back there that you've abandoned. Those are the ways that I would tackle it with people.
That's what I do too. I tell people, like, what was it that you wanted to do as a kid that society talked you out of? And then also the part of your brain that actually shuts off or can be reactivated, the fun part. So do something that's fun that lights you up, and then that part of the brain lights up. You tap into that frequency of fun, and then all of a sudden it's almost like opening up that channel, and all of a sudden you're led to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, because people think they can go from being totally shut off to life purpose in one decision. And sometimes today it's a tiny little road that you have to follow. It's like a little maze, and then if you just keep on following it, you'll get to where you have to go, but you have to actually turn on that part of the brain. That I want to ask you, like, one last question maybe, and then I want to wrap it up as to respect your time. You have talked about romantic love and how it takes over people's lives, and people just get so obsessed with having romantic love, and without it, they don't feel complete. And Aziz have talked about how we've kind of blown it out of proportion, and that love can come through us. If you want to finish up with that, I
Yeah.
think a really good one for so many people, because I know so many people seek us
Yeah.
for how do I find the one?
The Z's say if we were a more tribal society, we would not care about romantic love the way that we do. So the way that many of us use romantic love at the moment is to heal. And it's not just that it's a beautiful thing to be in companionship with someone and share your life with them, much like having a best friend is crucial. Like, I think of the times I was without a partner, and my friends and my family, vital. That's kind of going back a bit more to what the Z's say. They say that if we were more of our soul essence in the way that our society is organized, we would live more communally and we would feel fulfilled through that communal love that we would receive from the tribe, and we would not be as quick or as needy in singling out the one intimate romantic partner. Now, I know for me, boy, I went through a lot of lessons when it comes to romantic love, and I was seeking it. Like, I look back now and I'm like, oh, I was seeing romantic love as the solution to many of the issues I was carrying. And maybe for me, that was the right path to go through all those zigzags to get there. But it's interesting whenever I hear the Z's say that, because I don't think that's going to change super fast in society. Like, I don't think in 10 years' time, we're going to be a very tribal society and everyone's going to have let go of these forms. But I think in a weird way, what we're seeing in the world right now is, and what can be challenging to many people who have a more traditional mindset, is we're seeing new kinds of relationships and even identities. People are creating their own way of being identified now versus what many of us grew up with. So we're seeing some of that begin to slowly permeate. And yeah, I found that fascinating that the Z's say we over glorify romantic love. And I know one thing I will say that's true for me about being with Stephen for 7 years. And I hear this from other friends who've been, some couples who I've known have been together 50 years. There is something lovely about knowing somebody for that long and going through all those things with them that's like rings of a tree get added. But it does make you think, God, imagine if we were that open and supportive with each other all of the time. Now, that's a dream because that's not probably achievable right now. But if you think of it that way in terms of oneness is you would treat everyone else with the same respect, love, and care that you hopefully treat your partner or your child with. And I think when we don't treat our partner or our child that way, we're just mirroring the wounds that we have in society and the wounds that we inherited and the wounds that exist in the world. And so I found that very interesting that they weren't putting down romantic love or the love that a parent has for a child, but they're saying these are the ways you will tend to allow yourself to be more unconditional. And if you were tribal and unconditionally tribal, the world would be a magnificently different place and you would feel more connected. So I find that interesting.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
being on my show. The Conversations with Disease is out this week. And please make sure to get your copy and go to leeharrisenergy.com. He is incredible. You should, I want my audience to really go down the rabbit hole with your work, because there's nothing that they can't pull up that's not going to affect them on a deep level. I love you for being on my show. I hope to stay in contact with you and your team. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for such a lovely, warm welcome. It's really wonderful to meet you, and you have a beautiful vibe. And yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Of course. And please make sure to write a review or write a comment. And I love you so much for the other audience for tuning in and listening or watching. Thank you. Goodbye.